Hey everyone, and welcome back. This week we are talking about deadly sins and the Enneagram, which maybe you are super familiar with the topic of deadly sins. You could quote all 7 in your sleep, or maybe you have never heard about them before. But merging the deadly sins and the Enneagram, so deadly sins are only 7, so it's the deadly sins plus 2 additional sins. It can be a really helpful part of the Enneagram in exposing a weakness of yours that maybe you were not completely aware of, that you struggled with it so much, or maybe is something that you have dealt with a lot in your past and this just really explains why. But when we are talking about deadly sins, so the deadly sins are anger, pride, deceit, envy, greed or avarice, fear, gluttony, lust, and sloth. So those are the 9 sins we're going to be dealing with today. And when we are talking about these, we are not saying that you only struggle with one sin. That is absolutely not what we're talking about. You, yourself, as a sinful human being, can struggle with any sin out there. You are not choosy. We as humans are not choosy. You can deal with any sin. However, when we're talking about deadly sins and the Enneagram, we are talking about a specific sin or category of sin that is going to be kind of like a speed bump in your life or something you hit all the time. If you want to think of it in like terms of bowling, this particular sin is going to be your gutters. So in the bowling game of life, as you are rolling down those pins, when things are going awry or when you get off track, you fall into this sin, probably more so than other sins in your life. Maybe you call it something else other than what it's called here. Maybe you completely are unaware that you struggle with it, but it probably is there. And so I really think it's helpful that the Enneagram shines a light on this and tells you, like, yeah, you probably struggle with this. And you might be like, wait, no, I don't at all. But allowing God into that conversation and be like, okay, God, like, please search my heart. Tell me if there's any truth here, can be really helpful, not only in confirming your Enneagram type, but in continuing your journey of sanctification and your closeness with Christ at the same time. This sin is something in your life that God wants to take care of. And He wants to break the shackles of this sin in your life if you will let Him. If you don't hold so tightly to it, if you don't ignore it, if you don't pretend it's something else that's not as bad, if you actually offer it up to Him, He does want to take care of it and He will help you. And so I hope these 10 days, even though they were harder than the last 10 and more convicting and might have made you feel icky inside, I hope that God really spoke to you through these days and really illuminated part of your journey and part of your story that maybe you weren't aware of, and maybe now you have tools to work through this problem like with Christ, which is a really cool thing. I will just say personally that learning about my deadly sin was one of the best things that Enneagram has done for me. Because when I learned that 4's deadly sin was envy, I think my initial reaction was, that doesn't sound right. I'm not an envious person. But the more and more I let my heart ponder it, and the more and more I asked God to kind of search me, I learned that I was calling my envy other things. I was calling my envy pride. I was calling my envy self-pity. I was calling my envy just being a judgmental person in general. But actually pulling back the layers of it and looking at the core of what I was going through and what I was putting on other people, it was envy. I was envious of people, so I was judging them. I was envious of people, so I was self-pitying. All of those things came back to envy. And since I've learned that, God has really been able to do a work in my heart towards that. I've been able to catch myself so much more often in those thought patterns than I was before, when I was unaware that that was a problem. And so through learning about this, God has really changed my heart and renewed my mind. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why I put this as like a first hard thing in these devotionals. I wanted to encourage you in how you reflect God, but I also wanted you to hear this hard truth, because I want it to change you, and I want you to have broken shackles around this issue. I don't want it to be something you're lugging around and that you go back to all the time because it's not serving you the way Satan might be whispering in your ear that it is. because they are coping mechanisms. They definitely can be, but they also are sin. And I think we need to call it what it is in order to move on from it. So I'm just going to really briefly tell you what each of the Enneagram numbers' deadly sin is, and then I will let you guys discuss with your leader among yourselves. Okay, so the first deadly sin is for type 1s, and that's going to be anger. And typically, Enneagram 1s will call their anger frustration. They will call it, I'm right and they're wrong, those sorts of things. But really, when you boil it down, you peel back the layers, it's anger. For Enneagram 2s, their deadly sin is pride. And how they typically describe their pride is, well, I am the best one for the job. Like, I am the one that thinks of all the things and is helpful. I am the one that comes early and stays late, as a way to justify the fact that they think that makes them better than other people. And so they need to catch themselves. It's not that you do great things and people should see that. It's that, you need to humbly come and serve. So catching that pride is very important for an Enneagram 2. And then Enneagram 3s is deceit. And Enneagram 3s have a really hard time labeling these things they do as deceit. I talk about it a lot in the devotionals. Talk a lot about trying to convince you 3s that this is an issue. But if you relabel deceit as people-pleasing, I think that can hit the nail on the head maybe a little bit better and make it a little easier to swallow and a little easier to work on than the word deceit. And then for Enneagram 4s, their deadly sin is envy. And yeah, you can call it self-pitying, you can call it being judgmental, you can call it low self-esteem, you can call it whatever you want. But in the grand scheme of things, comparison and envy is ultimately a trap for yourself and not other people. And then for 5s, their deadly sin is greed. And they can tend to call it reserving energy. They can call it being smart and saving for later. But what it ultimately comes down to is not trusting that God will renew their energy and renew their resources. And then for Enneagram 6s, their deadly sin is fear. And in their devotional, I talk a lot about the difference between healthy fear and sinful fear. And sinful fear having a lot more to do with wanting to control. And so 6s might feel like, I just need to control this little area. I need to make sure that these things happen so that this area is in control. And ultimately, that's where we see their fear come out, is that they are not trusting in those areas. And so labeling that I need control as ultimately fear can be really helpful in seeing how it's actually impacting you. And then for Enneagram 7s, their deadly sin is gluttony. And 7s tend to call their gluttony just the pursuit of fun. They want more. They want more entertainment. They want more food. They want more shopping. They want anything that can be addictive or great. They want more. And ultimately, when we're talking about gluttony, we're not just talking about food. We're talking about anything that can be used in excess. And how 7s very easily fall into that trap. It's really interesting in the devotional as well. We also talk about how 7s tend to fall into gluttony when they're alone, more than when they're with other people. Other people can kind of keep them in check, but there's something about loneliness that really can make Enneagram 7s indulge in gluttony. For Enneagram 8s, their deadly sin is lust. And when we're talking about this, we're not just talking about sexual lust, even though that can definitely be it as well. But for most Enneagram 8s, how we describe their lust is this pursuit, this passion, this moving forward, but it's not always towards something that's theirs to do or that they should be doing. And a lot of times we see this come out when Enneagram 8s will charge forward without all the information, or will make these rash decisions or jump to conclusions without the full story. And that is often where their lust can hurt them. When Enneagram 8s do this, we can start to see that family members, people around them, won't trust them to tell them things that are going on in their life because they are afraid that Enneagram 8's going to do something and they're going to get in trouble. So they tend to play on the protective of Enneagram 8s. And what we know about Enneagram 8s, that's not what they want at all. So dealing with this lust issue is really important for Enneagram 8's just satisfaction in life in general. For Enneagram 9s, their deadly sin is sloth. And when we are talking about sloth, we're not necessarily talking about laziness. We're talking about numbing. We're talking about doing the same things over and over again, whether that's watching the same TV show or sticking with a really easy genre of books or just taking the same drive every day, doing dishes a certain way. Just something you don't have to think about, that you're rhythmically doing, that can cause you not to think about the other things that are going on in your life, the pain that you're feeling, something else you should be doing that's stressing you out. And in that way, when Enneagram 9s are not doing what they should be doing, they are indulging in sloth. And so that is the 9 deadly sins, and that is how the Enneagram describes them. And I hope that these last 10 days have been both convicting, enlightening, and somewhat encouraging to you as you read through them. I know that we talked to your leader a lot about not falling prey to shame here. We don't want you to get tripped up in shame of like this, I can't change. I might as well just keep indulging in what I'm doing, or I can't help it. See, it's my personality. And that's not what the point of here is at all. We want to encourage you here that change is possible. And the first step is knowing what the problem is. And then after that, there is a duty to change and a duty to grow. And so keep shame away, but also focus on, okay, now I have a job to do, and now I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to let Jesus help me break these chains.